There's a lot that we missed about Etherion, which is totally fair considering Mashima likes to randomly spread hints about it throughout the story. In fact, it's been so long since we heard about Etherion that I actually kinda forgot it was a thing. But with the access code we were given ages ago, anyone who has read Rave Master should already have an idea of what we can expect. If you haven't noticed yet, I kinda need to talk about Rave Master if we're gonna uncover the full extent of what Ziggy has planned for Etherion. So if you haven't started it yet and don't want any spoilers, then go ahead and read Rave Master first because it's gonna be pretty important. The reason being that Mashima clearly has a habit of referencing his older works. Fans think it's godly, and haters think it's just plain lazy. Point is, Eden Zero is loaded with references from Fairy Tail and Rave Master. Why is this important? Because some of these references have become seriously important elements of the story. You know the will they, won't they thing between Justice and Elsie? That's pretty much what happened with Erza and Jalal in Fairy Tail. Remember the weird little Squidward robot that taught Wise his ether gear? Yeah, that's Griff from Rave Master. So while a lot of these references are just nods to older works, a good chunk of them end up influencing the story. That means that when we see the term Etherion, something that was capable of mass destruction in both Rave Master and Fairy Tail, we can assume that it's going to be something similar in Eden Zero. But it's important to note that references or borrowed ideas like Etherion are never exactly the same as their earlier counterparts. For example, while Eden Zero and Fairy Tail both have guilds, the ones in Eden Zero are less like the guilds in Fairy Tail and more like clubs. And while Erza can change into whatever armor she wants, Elsie's armor depends on the planet she happens to be on. So while we can expect Etherion to be similar to its earlier counterparts, it's probably not going to be identical to either of them. And to be perfectly honest, I don't think it's going to be anything like the one in Fairy Tail. The one in Fairy Tail was just a big cannon used by the government. For those of you who are familiar with Rave Master, it should be pretty clear that the Etherion in Eden Zero is probably going to be a lot more similar to the one in Rave Master. In Rave Master, Etherion was a rare type of magic possessed by one of the story's main characters, Ellie. If the user couldn't control Etherion properly, then it risked destruction capable of upsetting the balance of time and space. But when used carefully, a user of Etherion could create powerful weapons known as Raves. In fact, whoever became master of the Raves could even seal Etherion and at least temporarily prevent it from harming the timeline. Already we can see how this is similar to Rebecca. Like Elsie, Rebecca has an extremely rare ether gear that is capable of altering time and space. If she isn't careful how she uses it, then she could destroy planets with chronophages wherever she goes. As far as someone to help her seal her powers or control them, I'ma just go out on a limb and say Shiki can probably do that one way or another. Can't really say for certain, it's just my gut feeling. But here's what I can say for a fact. With all of these similarities, it seems pretty obvious that Etherion is a weapon capable of both destruction and creation. Rather than some kind of nuke or giant laser cannon, Etherion is likely capable of destroying anything in its sight, or creating something you normally wouldn't see. But what does this have anything to do with Ziggy's current plans? Well, before I answer that question, I want to just give a quick shout out to the comment of the week from my Witch Hat Atelier video. If you'd like me to share your comment in the next video, then make sure to share your thoughts on Etherion down below. Anyway, like I said earlier, these borrowed ideas are never exactly the same, which we can already see in Eden Zero. First of all, it should be obvious that you can use Etherion just fine without Rebecca. I mean, Ziggy had Etherion for years when it was just him and the Shining Stars, and he was able to use it on the dragons with the Edens 1. At least that's what Witch led us to believe. Plus, Witch seemed perfectly ready to explain exactly what it does to Homura, so we can assume that whatever it does isn't too complex. Otherwise, how would the Shining Stars know how it works? In fact, when she was talking about it with Homura, Witch explained that it was Valkyrie's responsibility to look after it along with the ships and other weapons on the Eden Zero. So just like the other weapons, the Etherion should be simple enough that Valkyrie could have a working idea of how to use it. All of this tends to imply that Etherion is universally accessible, something that anyone with access would be able to use. Right there, it's different from Etherion in Rave Master, because only Ellie could use it. But just because it's universally accessible doesn't mean it isn't dangerous. In fact, that's probably what makes it as dangerous as it is. Remember, Etherion was capable of mass destruction in Rave Master and Fairy Tail, so that's probably what we're dealing with in Eden Zero. And when Witch thought the Edens 1 had Etherion, it was in response to this massive graveyard of dragons. But what you might have missed is that none of the dragons seem to have bullet holes. They just seem to have this general wear and tear type damage. That means Etherion isn't necessarily a weapon per se. In fact, it's probably not really a weapon at all. At the time of recording, chapter 194 hasn't come out yet, but the title of the chapter was leaked and we know it's called the Ether of Creation. Now, think about what Clown and Killer have been up to. They waited to take down Shiki and the others. They made sure to capture Rebecca alive, and then they went out of their way to sneak onto the Eden Zero. If they wanted to kill everyone, then they could have just blown up the Eden Zero or attacked it like Shura did. This suggests that they have some use for Rebecca and there's something they need from the Eden Zero. And think back to what Witch said when Rebecca was fighting clean and she sped up her Taurus. She said Rebecca had the makings of an Etherion Master. Notice at this point, all Witch and the others knew was that Rebecca could leap, not that she could control time. What Rebecca was able to do that we haven't seen anyone else do was control her ship with her ether gear, which is a step beyond just using ether gear controlled ammo like the others did. She actually controlled the Taurus with her ether gear, and that's what made her a potential Etherion Master. That right there is the big clue. If Etherion is this universally accessible device, then it's something anyone should be able to use regardless of their specific abilities. And if it's capable of destruction and tied into this whole ether of creation, then that suggests that what it does depends on who uses it. Finally, Witch's comment implies that Etherion is tied to ether gear manipulation. So when we piece this all together, the logical conclusion is that Etherion is controlled by ether gears. Specifically, it's some kind of ether gear amplifier. That would explain why anyone can use it, and why it's so dangerous. Because if someone can amplify their ether gear, they can accomplish insane feats like taking out hundreds of dragons. Now take that one step further and consider what would happen if Rebecca did that with Cat Leaper, one of the most powerful ether gears in the universe, or universes, I guess. The possibilities are god tier. So this is where I think Rebecca and Etherion fit into Ziggy's plans. Think about it. He has said on a number of occasions that he is going to see Mother. In fact, he is currently using the Edens 1 to calculate Mother's location. Which, I don't even know how you calculate the position of God, but sure, why not? Now think about what he could do if he had an amplified version of Cat Leaper. Ziggy could actually speed up the rate at which the chronophage approaches the planet. In fact, we still don't know the full extent of how Rebecca's ether gear is connected to the chronophages. Because she's still learning about her ether gear, there's a reasonable possibility that Rebecca can somehow directly control the chronophages and we just don't know it. Either way, attracting the chronophages by using Rebecca and the Eden Zero Etherion would allow Ziggy to destroy the planet and all of his enemies all at the same time as he makes his big escape. Then, as he does that, he can use the Edens 1 Etherion as the ship calculates Mother's position in real time, and travel there using an amplified version of his other ether gear, Wormhole. Like Rebecca did with the Taurus, Ziggy can control the Edens 1 with his amplified ether gear, transporting his entire ship to Mother's location while everyone else deals with the chronophage. And that's how I think Ziggy plans on dealing with his enemies and reaching Mother at the same time. Now, am I 100% certain this is exactly how things are going to play out? No, not really. But like any fun theory, I just want to put the idea out there, do some agenda pushing, and see if my theory actually plays out. Plus, come on, it would be a total Ziggy move to take Hermit's plan and turn it against the Eden Zero. And when you have one of the most powerful ether gears in existence just sitting there, and two versions of the most hyped up weapon in the story, it's hard to think that they won't somehow play into the finale of this arc. So that's why I think Etherion will resemble its earlier counterpart in Rave Master, and turn out to be a key piece of Eden Zero's best arc so far. And that's it for this discussion. Hopefully you enjoyed my theory on Etherion. If you did, then make sure to let me know by liking the video. Also, make sure to comment with your theories down below. And if you'd like more videos like this one, then make sure to subscribe and follow along with each week's video. Thank you for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.